I've obviously been fascinated by the darkness in human beings, that especially those who pass as normal, and the kinds of things they do that completely shock and surprise us.
The person who passes, in a way, who seems normal, but who hides or manages to live a secret life and fool people for a long time. So I'm fascinated by that.
Welcome to the musical Innertube. I'm Don Rooney.
I'm John Timpane.
On this podcast, we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, jobs, hobbies, and passions.
Difference makers who really make a difference.
Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of the musical Innertube. Don and I are welcoming not one, but two guests today, two for the price of one. And to start with, we have Ruth Setton. She is a writer, educator, world traveler, magician, and daredevil, and all-around wonderful person. She is the author of the novels The Road to Fez and the brand new, fulminating, coming out any time now, Zigzag Girl. She's earned awards from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, Penn, and Writer's Digest. Her fiction and film writing have brought down all sorts of honors and recognition. And the aforementioned Zigzag Girl won grand prize in the Screencraft Cinematic Book Competition, first prize in the Daphne Awards, and her script for a series based on the novel won first prize at the 2024 Los Angeles Crime and Horror Film Festival. Welcome to the musical Innertube, dear Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here.
You are joined in our virtual studio with Katherine Ramsland. When not stepping out with her darling horse, Sonny, Katherine Ramsland is a supremely busy person. She's a professor emerita at DeSales University, where she teaches forensic psychology in the graduate program. She's also written more than 2,000 articles and 74 books, including studies of forensic psychology and studies of serial killers, mass murders, the normal thing, and of course, novels. She consults for coroners, trains homicide investigators, has appeared as an expert on more than 250 crime documentaries, and she was an executive producer on Murder House Flip. She is now on the fourth book of her wildly entertaining Nutcracker Investigation series, books that draw heavily from her own expertise in forensic psychology. And the brand new one is number 4 in the series, and it's titled You Can't Hide, and it's especially fun for Don and me because it also has podcasts as part of what it offers us, because the lead character, Annie Hunter, has a really good one. I'd subscribe to that podcast. And we're very excited to welcome back our dear friend, Katherine Ramsland.
I'm excited to be here again. I'm very happy that you asked me to come.
So we brought you together partly. We will talk about your novels, but for the next 10 minutes, I'd like to just broach this question because we were talking about it just before we came on. There is this, I think it's interesting. I think many people find it interesting. Some people are very surprised at the mere presence of women in the crime genres. You know, I'm not, because I know you guys. But also, I think since both of you write books that are in different slices of that genre and definitely enjoy it, I'd love to hear from you. We'd both love to hear from you about what it's like from your viewpoint, what attracted you in the first place and what gets you writing about it. And I want to go to Ruth first because I want to surprise her. What do you think, Ruth?
Well, I'm a mystery lover, number one. I have been reading mysteries. They were my first favorite kind of book. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be Nancy Drew. You know, I wanted to be a detective. So mysteries. And the first story I ever wrote was a mystery in which there were 16 murders. It was about 14, my first story. And I set it in Budapest where I'd never been. And it was just a silly thing, but it showed where my interests were. And for years, I wrote all kinds of different things away from mysteries. And then somehow, long story, but I came back to it with Zigzag Girl. And magic was the way that led me back. Once I started, another great passion of mine was film noir. I've always loved noir novels, noir films. And something about magic and noir intersected in my mind. They just became a kind of dual inspiration, because magic, it's the art of making the impossible seem possible. And noir takes it takes like maybe the impossible and makes it in an odd way possible, that tiny little slit of hope and glint of light. Like I always think, with noir, I think of Venetian blinds, because there's always there's like an image of an eye looking through the blinds. And that I don't know why that's haunted me for years. The idea that it's a dark world. These characters have reached the end of their ropes. Noir breaks my heart, but at the same time, there's that little glint of light, and they probably will never get to enjoy it, but it's there. And that's what I love. And that's what I love in magic. And so I thought magic and murder and mystery, and Atlantic City was to me the perfect place to set it. I mean, later, but if there is a city made for mystery and magic and noir, I think it's Atlantic City. And so that's how I got to Zigzag Girl.
I might add, there's not only Atlantic City, but there's also the Pine Barrens, which is one of the creepiest, spookiest areas on the East Coast. And most people don't know about it, but it's about half of New Jersey. It's vast, and there's all this lore, including the Jersey Devil, but a lot of other stuff that's just crazy. And I love its presence in your book. Now, Kathy, you and I have talked about this a lot, but I'd love you to share with our readers what got you into this gig anyway. I mean, as a scholar, as a reader, and later, I guess, as a creative writer.
I think spooky stories as a kid. I never read Nancy Drew. I read the Hardy Boys. But I always read ghost stories. That was something I think my mother introduced me to, and I always loved the dark psychology, the more complex ones, not overtly ghosty, but suggestive kinds of stories. I'm not sure. I would say I do noir, not in the Sam Spade type of tradition. That's what I've always thought noir is kind of is. But I've obviously been fascinated by the darkness in human beings, that especially those who pass as normal, and the kinds of things they do that completely shock and surprise us. In fact, that's probably the theme of the memoir I'm currently writing. So, of all the different killers I've associated with, and the various people in forensics who, with me, are trying to discover all this. And I think that's what gives rise to the novels that I've written. This is my third series of dark novels. I don't think I could write something sweet and happy. I don't think I could. I had a couple of nonfiction books like that, but they were not easy to write for me.
Well, the influence of noir, Ruth, in your book is very, very prominent, including a lot of red herrings, a lot of people that look like they're very, very thuggish and criminal that turn out to be okay. People with flaws, but still okay. So I'm sure that's part of what you wove into the novel. But is that something, again, that you've encountered in real life that you brought into your writing?
Like one thing, like Katherine, we share a lot of interests, and one of them is the person who passes in a way, who seems normal in daily, but who hides, who manages to, like BTK, cube off whole sections of his character, or manages to live a secret life and fool people for a long time, and manage somehow to be successful in the daily world. So I'm fascinated by that. And I knew I wanted to play with that in Zigzag Girl. So I did. And the red herrings, I think they're part of magic too, and noir, where they, I mean, one of the main tricks in magic is misdirection.
Right.
So you learn to have the audience's, the reader, the viewer's eye focused on one thing while something else is happening. And behind their, that they're not looking at. And that has always fascinated me too. So I wanted to try and use elements of magic and noir in this novel to make it, just to make it more exciting to read too, more of a ride kind of.
Weren't we just hearing, Don, that many more women listen to true crime podcasts? I mean, a lot more. And then Catherine immediately said, "Oh, I think it's a lot more than that."
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this before we started the show, and I dug up some stuff. This is kind of what spurred my thought process into getting Ruth and Katherine here today, is that there was a piece of research released by the Pew Research Center back in 2023 that said about 34% of U.S. adults who have listened to a podcast listen to a true crime podcast. And among those, women were twice as likely as men to regularly listen to true crime podcasts. And this was in 2023. And then in 2024, there was a report released, the True Crime Podcast Listener Landscape Report. And it said that the no format pulls in more women than true crime. 37% of female podcast listeners listen to true crime. This was released in December of 2024. Comedy was only 34% and news was only 27%. So it got me to thinking that I do know a lot of women, my wife included. She loved watching the noir. She loved watching the really cheap, bad horror movies from the 50s. Like one of her favorites was House on Haunted Hill.
I
Or
grew up on that stuff.
yeah,
Day long Saturday watching every monster movie.
yeah, exactly. And she watched the monster movies with the marionette skeletons coming out of the acid pits and all that other stuff. She loved it. She loved it. So it just occurred to me that women are drawn to true crime, and you two were drawn to true crime as youngsters and decided to turn that into your novels. My question is, why do you think women more than men are interested in this true crime business?
Genre, yeah.
Katherine?
Well, the reason I think the total is probably higher is because I teach classes and I do a lot of presentations. And aside from the presentations I give to police, which is a largely male audience, it's largely female, and largely female in my courses, undergraduate and graduate. And the courses I attended when I was getting my degrees were far more female than male. So we're seeing a lot of, a real surge of not just interest in true crime, but credentialing so that people can become experts in these various forensic fields. So that's why I say I think it's higher. And, maybe I just have tunnel vision because that's what I immerse in all day long. But I do think some, and I think it's, the reasons are a variety. Some get into because they want to learn how to protect themselves. Some get into because of the frisson of the chill, like with horror, of getting scared, but within a safe arena. Some get into because they are interested, like we are, in the kind of person who could do these things, and they want to understand the psychology of it. So I think there's, in my opinion, there are a variety of reasons, but I turn it over to Ruth.
I think that makes perfect sense to me. But I'll say something about writing fiction, mystery fiction then. Instead of true crime, I think a lot of women, now you go to this like BoucherCon, where we just came from, which is the largest crime writing conference in America. And it was mostly women writers.
And that's all fiction.
And
aside from the little tiny group of nonfiction, but yeah, it was all fiction.
Exactly. Mostly, and a lot more women are writing mystery stories, dark stories, cozy mysteries too. There's a lot of categories. I think the largest category right now, this is not an official statistic, but it seems to me most of them, maybe you'll agree with me, Katherine, I'm not sure, but are cozy writers.
Yeah, cozy.
That seems to be the vast majority. But also, I think women are writing more, they're exploring more darker, more noir adjacent novels, and I think one of the things when I think about it, one of the reasons I wanted to go there and write about it, well, I can give you the biggest metaphor of all. My book is called Zigzag Girl. It's a sawing box. And,
Right.
Instead of sawing a woman in half, it's sawing a woman in thirds. It's and if you see my cover, it's a woman chopped in three, but her things are mixed up. The head isn't on
Yes,
top.
I love the zigzag with the letters, which are also sawed into pieces, and it's giving me the chills just looking at it. But that's because I've read the book, and then now, Katherine, remind me, your cover it looks like it's got sort of a silhouetted stilt house on the beach.
It's the Outer Banks in North Carolina.
That's where Annie Hunter, your protagonist, lives, right? Yeah,
Because I started
are very,
there, but I
yeah.
never said anything there, and I decided I needed a tax-deductible trip to the Outer Banks. What I like to do is go to the places that I write about that are scary and experience it. I mean, I went to several places alone in the winter that are the scenes of these, where I set them. But in particular, the Outer Banks, and I arrived on a rainy day, which was perfect because that's what I needed for that. And I enjoy immersing in the landscape and the weather.
And
did you go up to Massachusetts for that the novel about the graveyard and everything? Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
go ahead, Don.
the light plays tricks on you in Massachusetts too. I lived up in that area, and it's kind of bizarre. But Atlantic City itself is pretty spooky, especially once it gave over to gambling, and now it's got all these huge gambling palaces, that are surrounded by the people that are still desperately trying to live there.
It's I grew up going down to the Jersey Shore,
Yeah.
and watched Atlantic City keep changing. And what always fascinated me was that the new signs would be put up, but behind you could always see the traces of the old signs. And that even as a kid, I don't know, it excited me. There was something about the past never going away. And when I went to Atlantic City to seriously research this book, Zigzag Girl, and I discovered this whole historical era in Atlantic City that I hadn't been aware of, Camp Boardwalk. And the 1940s, when the U.S. Army took over Atlantic City and turned it into a base, an Army base during World War II. And they took they weren't casinos, but the old hotels, transformed them into apartments for the officers and everything, and a hospital called the Thomas England Hospital, which was where Resorts is now, Resorts Hotel. And the haunted theater where my story takes place, a lot of it, still stands. It's there. And it's just, you can feel it. There is no way you can enter that. Everybody who enters that theater feels the haunted nature. So it's just something, it was so evocative to me that, all kinds of things just started, the whole story started taking shape for me. And the same thing happened when I went to the Barrens, because I started seeing, I was not familiar with the Pine Barrens at all before, but I got very lucky and had a woman who lived out there and knew the tales and took me to the ghost towns. And I heard about the Jersey Devil and his rising. And
then it turned out that she was actually dead and had died 10 years ago.
That's right. And actually, one of the things there was that the living and the dead, you can't even tell. There's a forest, I think they called it the ghost forest, where trees are dead, but they don't go away. They just stand there for years, even though they're dead. There's something, I don't know, this stuff, maybe we're weird, Katherine, but there's stuff
Right.
about this that really, it got me excited. Like, I thought, what a place to set a mystery. And especially one that has, all these levels and layers and portals, and the boardwalk itself is magical in many ways.
Oh yeah. And I thought it was interesting too that the bulk of your book takes place on the boardwalk, not in the casinos, not in the glittery part of Atlantic City that's been rebuilt, but the boardwalk, which is like one of the oldest standing places that kind of still, it's probably very much the way it was back in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah. And I always had this feeling when I would go under the boardwalk and see those pillars and everything, that there was something like life under there. And when I spoke to a former police chief of Atlantic City, and he informed me that, because I would hear voices sometimes, I'd imagine that there's a scene that takes place, under the boardwalk, but I imagine these voices hearing things, and what would it be like? What's up there? And I learned that people actually lived there, that they had set up a community under the boardwalk within, and they called it, I think it was called something like Camp Underwood. And homeless people would get their drinks. Sometimes they would even like order pizza takeout. They would do. They had like a whole thing but they were also, a lot of them were junkies and druggies and fights and deaths, murders. And finally the police had to clear them all out. But it was there. The potential was there, So, yeah.
I might point out that there are ghost crabs on the Outer Bank.
Ghost crabs?
Yes, there are ghost crabs. That's right. Katherine, both of your novels, I have to say, both of you have really wonderful protagonists, and one of the many things that recommends them are the person who's at the center of it. And I'm wondering with Annie, we get so much about her that it's really interesting. She certainly has her opinions. For example, she hates patchouli, right? She does.
Yeah.
But also, we see her as the head of a team, right? And seeing, her right-hand person, her relationship with Natra, if I'm saying it correctly,
right.
Which I think is really great. And what I really like about it is how aware they are of the state of evidence, which of course you have to be as a forensic. I'd love you to talk about that, because they're constantly saying, well, we have evidence to prove this, we need more to prove that, and you realize just how fine the cake sometimes can be sliced. But I'd love to hear you talk more about working that up as part of the novel, because it's one of the tastier things I really gravitate to.
Well, one thing I really love doing with these novels, with all four of them, is to bring a forensic methodology that you've probably never heard of. So I want to present that to readers. Like, I went to the Texas Body Farm and learned how to draw from decomposed faces to be able to identify somebody. I took a whole week course on that, and that went right into the novel. I was at the airport writing that chapter right after I left the body farm there. I like to insert that because I do want to show that they are on the cutting edge as much as possible. In the Concord novel, it was a digital examiner who actually gave me some of the ideas for that, and that was really authentic stuff. I like that in part because when I did my research on forensic psychologists, especially female forensic psychologists, which is when I was giving rise to Annie, a lot of them were just counselors, or they worked in the prisons with sex offenders, and all they did was profiling. And I thought there's so much range in forensic psychology that I want to show all the different things a forensic psychologist can do to break the mold of this, they're only profilers kind of thing. And there really aren't that many female forensic psychologists in fiction. So it was an opportunity for me to present to readers a world they may not understand or know very much about.
Is this giving too much away? If I ask, what is the forensic innovation or little-known technique that you broach in this novel, or is that giving too much? If it's giving too much away, fair enough.
Art, I don't think many people realize how much calculus goes into that with the mathematics and whatnot. So the drawing from decomposed spaces is a real class. And the odd thing was I sent Aiden to it in my earlier novel, fiction.
Oh, Aiden's a character. He's part of the team, and we should explain that.
Right.
Go ahead.
So
yeah.
Aiden's the PI, who was also an artist. So I sent him fictionally to this class, and then I got invited. to come and actually do it. So then I had all the techniques to put into it for that.
There's a lot of techniques that you bring in from all of the different members of the Nutcrackers group. This is the group that the lead, Annie Hunter, the lead female forensic psychologist, has gathered around her to help her with her cases. And there's a private investigator. There's a guy who's good with computers. There's another guy that comes in who is a lawyer and her love interest. So there's a lot of these people, and they all come in, and they all have their specialties. But then there's all tools that they use in order to, not just the computers, but maps and graphs and other things. So it's a real study, like you said, something that's put together meticulously in order to recreate what happened and why it happened and who would have done it.
Yeah, that kind of came from an experience I had. I was on an exhumation team for a couple of years where I was the documentarian, and I had to know everybody else's expertise. And we had teams, as many as 30 people sometimes coming into these cases. So it was very exciting for me to see how all these different methodologies and areas of expertise were coordinated on a case. So I think that's really what inspired me to create that kind of satellite people we have a core team of 3, but we have these others who come in.
One of the things that I wanted to point out that I've read in both of your books and that I've read in other books of a similar nature, and that John and I we followed the Serial podcast, which was one of the first podcasts to break out, and it was about the trial of a person accused of murder. The protagonist is a woman, and the antagonist is a man. And in most of the murders, that's what happens. The woman goes missing, the woman winds up dead, the man did it. So it's a very male-female relationship. And I know if you talk to police who deal with rape, they say it's not sex, it's power. That the man is not after sexual gratification, he's after power over the woman. So how does that tie in with your novels, Ruth and Katherine, and what you've experienced as you've done the research for your novels?
Ruth,
Well,
go ahead, Ruth.
one of the things I wanted to do with my novel was to shift the gaze from, in noir, for example, and in many mysteries, it's like the man looking at the woman, and there's, if you look at noir, there are these stereotypes of women: femme fatale, the loyal secretary, all of these things. And I wanted to turn it around. So when I took this idea of the zigzag girl and the sawing box, I wanted to make it that the woman is not just in the box, she controls the narrative. And even the Cleo West, the World War II magician that I created, one of the characters, when she is sawed in half during World War II. Now, Lucy Moon, my main character, hates the box, loathes it, can't bear the idea of it. But Cleo, when she was sawed in half during World War II for an audience of wounded soldiers, many amputees among them, most of them were amputees at this hospital, when they saw her being put back together again and rising whole and triumphant, she brought hope. And it was like that light, that glint of light that I'm always looking for. I guess my idea of noir with hope, it's just that little thing. So I wanted to do that, to shift the gaze, and to have Lucy herself be a creator of magic, very creative magic, innovative magic, that I created her illusions, thinking, what can I have her do in a way that things that are psychological things that are happening, like the black rose that emerges from inside, the darkness, when she does the shadow, the mask and the shadow. Everyone in the book is wearing a mask. Everyone has a shadow. She brings it out in the open, and she forces things to happen by bringing out this inner world, this magic world. So things like that I like to do. I wanted to try and do that with Lucy and Cleo, and even her best friend Stormy Weather, who was.
Yeah, it's kind of a family. The people who gather around Lucy Moon, Auntie Mays and Da, and there's even a familial thing in Cleo's intervention as a ghost. A feeling in it. There does seem to be this closeness, not just among the family Moon, but sort of the extended family of her friends. It's really very interesting. I mean, there's a family element in Catherine's book as well, because there's a possibility that Annie's father might have been involved in some stuff. I'm not going to say much, but she's really interested in solving that issue too, which I think is fascinating. I mean, could you just a minute, in just a minute or two, Katherine, can you talk about Annie's relationship with her father, which I think is interesting?
Yeah, I would want to say that in the three prior novels, I had bad guy females. So in this one, it's more. It came out of an idea that I had that I can't say because it would give away the plot. But
don't do that.
It's when I started the Annie character, I wanted her father to have been like a person obsessed with missing people, because he thought certain types of cases would lead him into this liminal realm, and he'd find the threshold to the other side, and all this stuff, and then he disappears. So that's the start. I really never knew where it was going to go. But when her grandfather dies in the third novel, then she has to really come to terms with this family background,
right,
who her father was, and that then plays out in this novel. So it's kind of a continuation of my sort of very small kernel of an idea of this guy loving missing persons cases, and then he's missing.
And you're right.
It's terrible when it happens too. Yeah.
You have had nasty women in your novels in the previous. We've gone through that.
Who passes normal?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, listen, guys. We could go like 3 times longer, and in fact, we really probably should, because these are 2 lovely novels. Want everybody to get a copy. The novels we're talking about are "You Can't Hide" by Katherine Ramsland, which is out, and "Zigzag Girl" by Ruth Setton, which is coming out, correct?
Yes, and I have a date. We finally have an actual real publication date, March 2nd. Well, it's coming out in the UK next Thursday, October 20th. Oh. But it won't come out in the US until March 2nd, 2026. But that's it. It's set now.
Thank you, Ruth Setton, and once again, Katherine Ramsland.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Great to be here.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube.
Send us an email at musicalinnertube, all one word, @gmail.com.
Or log into our website, musicalinnertube.com, and click on the microphone in the lower right-hand corner to leave us a voicemail.
And while you're on our website, take a few minutes to listen to past episodes of the podcast, along with pictures and biographies of our guests, blog posts, and lots more.
Our thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for providing us with our theme music.